Today, we are going to be looking at my updated in the bag. I'm still going to be using the Grip AX5 disc golf bag. I've still been really liking it, and it's a great bag. I definitely recommend it. Much better than what I was using before, which is my hand-eye bag. We'll get started with my putting putters. I have these two D-Line Flex 2 P2s. I'm not the best at putting, but I feel like that's more of a archer, not the arrows, just because I'm not very good. But I'm trying to get better. I'm practicing. With my putting style, I can aim a little bit to the right of the basket, and then it'll kind of fade in and hit dead center if I have a good putt, which is very rare. For the throwing putters, I have 4. This is a Lone Star Disc Armadillo, and I really only throw this for approaches or shots are under 200 feet. I've had this disc for a super long time. It's just gotten really flippy. So it's if I throw it flat, it'll turn quite a bit and then drop. So I really like the Armadillo for approaching. It feels really comfortable in my hand for both backhand and a forehand. I like the groove, or whatever you call this, because I feel when I approach, I can set my finger on it, and then I feel I don't know, it just feels comfortable. For the next putter, I have this MVP Watt. This disc is so good. The numbers are 2500. And I find that it's kind of more of a throwable glitch. It's more of a disc instead of a frisbee, which I really like, because I like the idea of having a glitch in my bag, but it's just I feel it's a little bit too deep and it just doesn't feel great in my hand. So the Watt is a great alternative. This disc is great for any shot. The next disc I have is the Lone Star Discs Artemis. I have had this for a very long time and I still love it. When I first got it, it was an overstable approach disc, but with how much I've used it, it's become pretty straight to a little overstable, and this thing just feels so good in my hand, especially for the forehand. This is my go-to forehanding putter, and it's just if I put it flat, it'll go straight, fade a little bit at the end. If I put on a touch Annie, it'll flex. So it's a really good disc to throw in the woods, because it's reliable. It's I know it'll fade out at the end. And then I also have this Tempo. This has gotten a little too beat up. It's kind of flying like a Artemis, but a little bit more overstable. So I'm trying to get a newer, a zone, or just some more overstable approach disc. So this will probably be coming out of my bag soon, or maybe my Artemis will come out of my bag, and then this will shift into that spot. It's it flies pretty much like the Artemis, but I feel if I put it on Anheuser, it'll flex out of it a little bit more and a little bit faster. So it's I really like this disc, and I'm trying to get a new disc to replace this. And then I forgot about the Zone OS. I don't throw this very often. I forgot to film this in the field, so sorry there's no flight for it, but just look on any person throwing a Zone OS and you'll see how overstable it is. And it's just really the only time I use this is for skip shots or get out of jail shots. Now we are going to be moving on to my mid-ranges. Right now I have 4. The first one I have is this MIDI. I have had this for a long time and it's gotten pretty beat up. I really like the feel of it. It doesn't feel great for backhand because as a bead, it's not backhand, a forehand, and it's just I don't love the feel of the bead on it, but it still feels pretty good. And this thing is just reliably overstable. If I throw it flat, it'll go straight for a little while and then kind of dump pretty hard at the end. It'll come out with some tight Annies, and I really like this disc. I've been throwing it a lot lately, and I feel it might be getting a little bit too understable, and it's kind of flying close-ish to my Pathfinder. So I might be looking for a more overstable mid-range in a month or two, because I've just been throwing this disc a lot. This next one I have is the Pathfinder. I love Thought Space's stamps. I just think they're so cool. This thing complements my Origin really well, because they're both pretty straight, but the Pathfinder is straight to overstable, while my Artemis is straight to understable. So if I throw this flat, it'll go really straight and then fade out the end. When I was throwing it in the field, I might have thrown it on a little bit of Annie, so it kind of looked more understable than it usually is. I honestly don't know if there's a better feeling mid-range. And this has gotten very beat up, and I feel it's just stayed overstable for a long time. The next one I have is the Discmania Origin. I love this disc. This is my favorite type of slot, which is the straight to slightly understable mid-range, because my preferred angle is like a touch of hyzer. So this will kind of like pop up to flat and kind of just go dead straight. If I throw this flat, it'll turn and then kind of pan out to flat and then kind of fall. And this thing feels so good for a forehand, and it feels really good for the backhand. And I think that this and the Pathfinder like complement each other really well. And it's a really good woods disc because it's just like, I feel like you can shape so many angles with it, because like you can put on some hyzer to flip up and you can throw it flat to turn. Put it on Annie so it kind of flexes. Final mid-range I have is the West Side Discs Tersis. This is a little bit more understable than my Origin. I kind of tested some dyeing technique on this. I have a video on it where I like colored in the stamp. Kind of just looks like strokey. I can throw this flat and it'll turn like a lot and then come back at the end. I can put this on some decent hyzer, it'll pop up to flat. Moving on to the fairway drivers, I have 4. We will start with this first run Raptor. The Raptor is like my overstable fairway driver. I don't have to throw it very often, but it's like if I ever need to throw a thumber, I'll kind of throw this on this. That'll just like go straight up and then drop. And I love how like board flat this Raptor is, and how it feels super good for a forehand. And I feel like I can like chop it on a ton of Annie and it'll always come back. And this thing will like never burn over on you. This is just like so reliably overstable. Then this is possibly my favorite fairway driver. I have had this for a very long time. I found this under a tree and I'm very happy I did, because it's like, before I found this, I had a Thunderbird and I just hated it for some reason. But then I found this and I fell in love with the Thunderbird. This thing, I have hit so many trees with it, or I've hit railroad tracks. I've rolled it across gravel roads on accident, and it's just stayed reliably overstable ever since I've got it. And I can throw some incredible like flex shots with this, and some really good pushing hyzers. And it's really like, if I throw it flat, it'll always come back, and it's just reliably overstable. And I love the feel of it for a forehand. Feels really good for a backhand. And then I have this Ricky Explorer. So it's like, my problem with understable stuff is I don't like the feel of it, and like, because it just kind of feels weird in my hand. It's like, it feels overstable, but it's really understable, because I found this disc and it was already pretty beat up, and I started throwing it a bit and it's gotten even more beat up. Like, it'll go almost dead straight, maybe turn a little bit and then come back at the end. If I put it on some anhyzer, it'll kind of pop up to flat and then keep pushing. If I throw anhyzers with this, it'll push like the entire way and then flex out back to flat at the end. And this is like my main forehanding disc, because I don't have a ton of speed on my, or like I don't have a ton of arm speed for my forehand. So it's like, if I throw this thing flat, it'll kind of just go straight for a while and then fade out at the end. Final fairway driver I have is the relay that you get for signing up for the PDGA. I haven't had many like understable fairway drivers. I tried an Essence for a little bit, but I didn't love it. It was a little bit too overstable. I'm sure if I got it a little bit more beat up, it would fly it pretty nice. But I've always kind of just came back to the relay. And I like the lightweight because it'll go like really far. But it's also like, it's kind of touchy because of how light it is. Like, this is probably the disc that will go over the farthest on my forehand, just because it's flippy and I can throw it flat and it'll turn a little bit and then come at the end. And it feels super good for a backhand. The distance drivers are what I'm least comfortable throwing, just because I feel like, I don't know, it's like, I feel like they're a little bit too big in my hand. So what I'm trying to do is get more slower speed distance drivers, kind of like a Wraith instead of a Destroyer or like an Onyx or something. This time lapse, I had a different one in my bag in the previous video, and then I found this at a course, and it's a little bit more flat, which I like. This thing is just like reliably overstable. If I throw this flat, it'll fade quite a bit at the end. I can throw this on some like steep anhyzers and it'll always flex out of it. I don't throw on hyzers very much just because it's really overstable. I don't love the 12 speed feel. So I'm gonna try to get like a 10 or 11 speed to replace it. Then I have this Flow. I really like the fly of this disc. It may be just a little bit too domey, but it's like, I'm being really picky. So it's like, it's really not that bad. It's just reliably overstable. It kind of flies like a farther Thunderbird for me. And it's just like, I can put on some anhyzer, it'll flex out of it. Can put it flat and it'll fade. And I really like the plastic. It's really cool, the Opto X. I think the Flow is very underrated. And I just like feel like I don't hear much about it, but it's like, yeah, it's good. Then I have this Pro Wraith. This was like the first disc I got. This thing is so flippy, and it's just gotten so beat up over the years. And it's just like, this is probably my farthest flying disc because I can just throw it flat and high and it'll turn, come back at the end. I can throw some incredible hyzer flips with this. I can throw rollers with this. And this is kind of just like a do-it-all distance driver for me. Final disc in my bag is this Tumbleweed. This thing is kind of strictly like put it on a lot of hyzer, have it flip, turn, come back, throw it really high and flat, and have it like just pan, just keep going and turning forever. And yeah, it's like I don't throw it very often, but it's a roller disc, but I also kind of use some other discs for that. So I really don't need this in my bag, but it's also like at sometimes I feel like the really flippy fairway or distance driver could come in helpful. So that's going to do it for my updated in the bag. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see the review for this beautiful bag here, I'll have that linked at the end of the video. And then if you want to see the technique on how to dye the Tursus, which is a spin dye, I'll have that linked at the end of the video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.